Hi guys, welcome to Mr. Smith's Kitchen. Brian, Mr. Smith Kitchen. Today we're gonna make an apple pie. We're gonna do one from scratch. We're gonna make a Dutch apple pie. You may be saying, what's the difference? I'll tell you, as I say for like the 18th time. So a regular apple pie, 2 crusts, bottom crust, crust on top, vent holes. Very cool, standard, traditional American pie. Dutch apple pie, which by the way isn't Dutch at all, has a crumb topping on it. If you remember the pear pie we made a few weeks back, I had the crisp topping on top. Same thing, only done with apples. And this is it's not a hard recipe at all. It does take a couple extra steps, so to speak, but all in all, not anything challenging. This would be a good pie to kind of get your feet wet in the pie making, I think. Now there are easier pies out there, but this is a good, medium, middle of the road as far as challenge goes pie. And I thought we'd try one. I haven't had an apple pie in I can't remember how long, and normally when I make apple pies, I just use the pie filling that we make. We put in the jars. I video from a long time ago for that. I remember it was one of my first videos when I didn't know how to make videos at all. So from scratch was interesting. It's new to me because we kind of took the canned version, the processed version, and I adapted it a little bit to make a we can make it now version from scratch. So that being said, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're returning, thank you. Either way, thank you. I hope you get something out of this if you are new or out of my videos. We do a lot different things, mostly cooking, or at least involving food in some form or fashion. And if you're returning, you already knew that. And I'm just glad you came back. It means I'm doing something right. Don't forget to hit subscribe down below. And a little square box says subscribe. Right next to it is the notification bell. If you hit that, you'll know when my videos come out. And that way you'll know we can watch them. We try to do at least 2 a week now. We were doing 3, but times being what they are, 2 is about all we can get out. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I always appreciate them. I don't find them horribly necessary, but at the same time, they do help grow our community. Comments, love comments. Keep them rolling, and that way we can build our community. The more thumbs up, thumbs down we get, the more people see our videos, and then that way they join our community also, and we just keep growing. We got 7 more months. I'd like to be at least 250 subscribers by the end of the year. But, we set goals, and if we don't hit it, we just keep trying, right? Keep plugging along. That's what we do. Much like the Goonies, we never say die. All right, well, let me get the camera moved, and we'll talk about things we'll need to make this with, and we'll start making it. It's going to be a 2-step process, 3 if you still got to make your pie crust, and it involves a couple tools, but not much. So, let me get the camera moved, and we'll get started. All right, hold on 1 second. Okay, so we are now down at the counter. Welcome to the counter. And some things we will need to make this with. First thing, as always, scale. Always recommend a scale every time. Next thing you'll need to make the crumb topping with is a food processor. I'm sure you could potentially even do this by hand, but it'd be a little interesting because the crumb topping has oats in it, and you want them ground up. I suppose you grind them up. If so, you could use a I don't know what you would use to grind them up with. Maybe a small blender, or you could use a blender. You could use a hammer, a mallet, and a bag. If you have a pestle and mortar, you could use that. Or mortar and pestle, you could use that. But I'm using a food processor. I have one. That's what the recipe called for when I found this one. And it works for me. This is actually almost the exact same recipe that we used for the pear crisp topping, the crisp topping on the pear pie. We're just changing one thing, I think. But yeah, pretty much. We're not putting pecans in it. Alright, so that being said, you will also need a recipe, which I have mine written down in 2 parts. Here is the one that's got my crisp topping on it, and then I have the other one for the apple pie. And as always, If we like the recipe, we leave it alone. If we don't like the recipe, we modify it or get rid of it. All right. So that being said, you also need for the apple pie filling a pot, which is on the other side of here, right here, and a bowl. Other than that, we'll just have the ingredients. The ingredients I'll give to you in teaspoons, tablespoons, cups. I'll also give it to you in grams. That way you can be accurate with your scale. All right, so first thing we need to do is go ahead and get our processor plugged in and get the top off of it, open it up. All right, so we are going to, in here right off the bat, we're going to put in some flour. We're going to put in 3/4 cup or 93 grams of just some regular old all-purpose flour. Get that in there. We are going to follow that with half a cup of or 100 grams of brown sugar, and that would be packed brown sugar. So if you're just using measuring cups, half a cup of packed brown sugar will be the next ingredient, followed by some spices. We are going to put our cinnamon. We have a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. We have a 1/4 teaspoon of cloves, 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom, and a half a teaspoon of salt. Now I'm using kosher salt. If you don't have kosher salt, you can use just regular table salt. My recommendation with kosher salt is if you have coarse kosher salt, which means they're big flakes, smash them up. Yeah, whether you be with a pestle mortar, literally just a spoon on the counter, in a bowl, smash them up. If not, somebody will get a mouth of salt. It happens every time to me. All right, so we're gonna get that in there. Those 4 spices, and the grams on those would have been, for the cardamom, a half a teaspoon is 1 gram. Half a teaspoon of cinnamon is 1 gram. I'm sorry, a 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom, 1 gram. Half a teaspoon of cinnamon is 1 gram. 1/4 teaspoon of cloves is also 1 gram. But a half a teaspoon of salt is 2 grams. All right? Got that in there. Next thing is we're going to put in our oats. Okay? Now, I am using rolled oats. You can use rolled oats or you can use quick oats. And you'll see it'll be named on the box. So it'll either say rolled oats, quick oats. There is a third type of oat called a steel oat. You do not want those. They are super thick. They take forever to cook. And when you bake with them, they don't bake soft. So quick oats, like you'd buy for oatmeal, or rolled oats, all right, or old-fashioned oats, just not steel. We're gonna put that in there. Now we're just going to throw the lid on and give this a good spin. We are looking to get these oats down to just, not like flour, but small pieces. So we're going to pulse this for a few minutes. All right, got that pulsed. We are good. You can see that in there. But see how it's just looks like granules, almost like fine gravel? That's what you're looking for. You don't want any whole pieces of oats. All right, so now we're going to add butter to this. I have a half a cup or 113 grams of butter, and I've got it at room temperature. In 1 second there. Oh, get this stuff out of the way. Half a cup, room temperature butter cut into little pieces. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn this on, and we're going to put them in one at a time. All right, we got them in there. So, and what that is, that butter acts as kind of like a binder, hold it all together. So, that's what you should look like when we're done. All right, kind of like sand with a little oat. Now you can see like the size of the oat chunks. That's the white spots right there. But it should hold together, just like so. All right, and that is how you make crisp topping. Now all we got to do is just set this to the side, and we can go on to making our pie filling. So let me get this all cleaned up right here, and we'll move on to this pie filling. Alright, so we got that cleaned up, good to go, out of the way. Let me get the rolling pin out of here. There. So now we're going to move on to our filling. Now I've already made my pie crust. If you're making your own pie crust, I would do that before anything else. Get it rolled out in the pie pan and just stick it in the fridge. That way you don't have to fuss with it. So, which I've already got mine in the fridge, or you can just use a regular old store-bought crust. That's completely up to you, however you like to do it. I prefer the from scratch crust. All right, so the first thing we have to do, I've got a bowl right here, glass bowl. Well, you need a large bowl at any rate. First thing you want to do is slice up your apples. Now, apples, I got them about 1/4 inch slices. I have a peeler slicer machine. If you don't have one, and you're going to say to yourself, yeah, but I don't really need one. Yeah, I won't use it often enough. Trust me, you'll use it more than you think. All right, so what I did was I peeled and cored my apples. I sliced them into 1/4 inch slices with my machine, and I cut them into thirds. All right, but you want your no bigger than 1/4 inch. The thinner and smaller your apple slices are, that's actually 2 slices, the quicker they'll bake. And you want them to be fairly even, so that way you don't have some that are crisp, some that are soft. As far as types of apples you use, I've got Granny Smith and Honeycrisp in here. They both stay firm when you bake. One is sweet, one is tart. I think it gives it a balance. You're going to use 2.5 to 3 pounds, which is about 6 to 7 cups of apples, peeled and sliced. All right, to that, I'm going to take my I have pumpkin spice. Okay, now, if you don't like pumpkins, I think this adds a good apple pie flavor. It's what I put in my pie filling, and it's been successful for me so far. But I've got 1 teaspoon or 2 grams of pumpkin spice. You could also just use cinnamon. You could use nutmeg. You could use cinnamon and nutmeg. Whatever, whatever suits your fancy. We're going to take that pumpkin spice, we're going to dump it on top of the apples, and we're just going to give it a good mix-up. And to save me from getting it all over my hands, I'm going to wear a glove. I thought to myself the other day, I really should start wearing my apron when I bake. I've been baking all day. We've, up to this point now today, have made 2 blueberry pies, a banana cream pie, and a peach pie. Now we're making this apple pie together. This one will be for the house, and I want to see how the recipe actually turns out, so that way I can make a second Dutch apple pie for the same person that ordered one of the blueberry pies, the banana cream pie, and the peach pie, which is awesome. All right, so we got that mixed up. Now we're just pretty much going to leave those set right there, and we're going to move on to our stovetop. All right, we're going to use our saucepan, and the first thing we're going to do is take a 1/2 cup of butter, 1 stick, 1/2 cup, 1 stick, 113 grams. I never used to understand why there was such a need to tell the grams on butter, and then I found out why. When I started making my own butter for a little while there, when cream was cheaper than butter, which didn't last long, I needed to know the grams, so that way I knew, because I would just make a pound or 2 of butter. I wouldn't know, quite the measurement on it. Where a stick of butter is a 1/2 cup. Half that stick is a 1/4 cup, so on and so forth. So I needed to start knowing grams. All right, so I'm going to get this melted, and then once we get melted, we'll put our other ingredients in there. So our butter's melted, and we're good to go there. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add 3 tablespoons or 24 grams of just regular all-purpose flour to it. And what we're going to do is we're going to stir this. We're going to whisk it, with our whisk. And we're just going to put in a little bit at a time. Make sure we get that all nice and incorporated. Try not to have any lumps, if at all possible. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring this up to a simmer. And we're going to let this simmer for 1 minute. So when you see it start to lightly bubble, all right, that means we're going to let it bubble for 1 minute. What we're doing is we're activating that flour so it'll help as a thickener. Okay, so we've been simmering for 1 minute. Got a nice little bubble action going there, some foam on the top. So the next thing we're going to do is add in 1/4 cup of water. All right, got our 1/4 cup of water in there. And we're going to add in a 1/2 cup of, 1 cup, 200 grams of just regular old granulated sugar, plain old white sugar. All right, and then we're going to bring this up to a boil. Make sure we get all our sugar out of there. I think my bowl was wet from earlier. And what we'll do is we'll bring this up to a boil. We'll reduce the heat down and let it simmer for 3 minutes. Okay, so we've simmered for our 3 minutes. Going to turn the heat off, get it off the heat. But right here's what we look like. All right, see how we're just simmering along? That's good and hot. And I'm here to tell you, please don't get that on your skin. It will burn. Sugar is not a friend of skin when it's bubbling. So we got to put that. We're just going to take this and we're going to pour it on top of our apples. Just like so. Set that down on the counter on the stove for a bit. And we're just going to give this a good mix. Alright, so now that we've got this coated and we're in good shape, you know, everybody has got to know each other, you know, and now normally, like with the peach pie or even a cherry pie, anything that you take a sauce off the stove with, you would normally want to let this sit and rest for a second. And I mean, it is going to sit and rest for a second, but where we took that off, even though it was boiling hot, we stuck it on these apples. These apples are room temperature, so it helped drop that temperature quick on it. And by the time we get everything else out and ready to go, it should be good enough to go. But like a cherry pie or that peach pie filling, you want to let it sit for, you know, however long it takes to get to room temperature. And that way you don't melt your pie crust. Putting a hot filling into a pie crust will melt your pie crust just faster than anything. Yeah, your alternative to that is, if you don't want to wait on this to cool down a little bit, is to pre-bake your pie crust, which that just seems to be kind of a waste of time. It'd take longer to pre-bake your pie crust than it would to actually just do what we're doing here. So we'll go ahead and set this off to the side for a minute. All right. And like I said, it's not hot anymore. I mean, I can touch it with my fingers, because it's hit those apples that were room temperature. So we just got to get our pie crust real quick. I'll get it out of the fridge. Which I probably left it in the fridge a little too long, so it's probably pretty stiff. And that's okay. It's not a big deal. And we're just going to take our apples. So figure out what I did with my spatula. And we'll put them in here. I mean, really, this is almost a pie you could even make during the week. Get home from work, and I mean, even with my talking in the beginning, we haven't spent more than 15-20 minutes on this. So if you wanted, a good dessert, or had an extra, say, half hour to play around in the kitchen, you could easily make this pie and run with it. All right, got that on there like that, like such. Set this off to the side. Then, yep. All right, so I'm gonna let this sit for a minute so I can fold the edges in. Right now, it's still pretty stiff and won't let me fold where it was sitting in the fridge. And if I'd have thought about it, I would have pulled this out a long time ago. So when I come back, I'll have the edges on this folded, and we'll move on to the last step before we put it in the oven. So I got the edges turned in. I did fail to mention, it seems like I always fail to mention this. While you're taking that few minutes to let your apples cool down a little bit, you're getting your pie crust together and get to this stage, go ahead and start your oven up. We're going to bake this at 375 degrees. All right. And we're going to bake it for a minute at 375 degrees. So we've got our pie crust in there, edges folded. I got one little bit I'm not happy with. There we go. So now we're just going to take our crisp topping. get our blade out of here. If you're using a food processor, please be careful with the blade. They are very sharp, very, very sharp, and you don't want to hurt yourself. And we're just going to take our crumb topping, and we're simply just going to crumble it onto the top, our Crust topping, and just crumble it onto the top. You know, we've got one heaping thing of apples here, that's for sure. So we'll go ahead and get this on here, and then we'll talk about baking. All right, we've got it. Got our Crust topping on there. Here is our pre-baked status. Looking good. I think it looks amazing. So, I've already got a baking sheet in there, sitting in the oven. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in here, and we'll talk about what we're baking. Oh, and how long to bake it for. But you definitely want to bake that on a sheet, a baking sheet. Or put a piece of parchment paper down on your rack. That's one thing I've seen that's been kind of popular lately, is just putting a piece of parchment paper on the rack underneath where you're baking, and that way it catches any drippings. So, as I stated just a second ago, preheat your oven to 375 degrees. Now, what happens if we get to this point and you're like, oh, I forgot to preheat my oven? Because Lord knows I do that a lot. And I'm not even sure why. But I would just simply stick that in the fridge and let it sit in there until the oven is preheated. Bring it out, or at least close to preheated. Bring the pie back out, let it sit out here for a second. The last thing you want to do is take something that's been in the fridge, it's glass or ceramic, your pie pan, and put it in a blazing hot oven. You'll crack it for sure. So when your oven's about preheated, bring your pie back out, let it sit here for a couple minutes, and throw it in the oven. Done. So we're at 375 degrees on the oven. We're going to let this bake for about 55 minutes to an hour. Now, I am going to check this every 15-20 minutes and make sure that top is not starting to burn. If it does start to burn or get dark, you're going to want to just take a piece of aluminum foil and tent the top. Put it over top of the pie. That way it'll continue to cook and it won't burn that crisp. Because, I mean, that can happen. That's just the nature of crisp sometimes. Out of the 4 or 5 pear pies I made, that crisp topping on one of them got away from me and it burnt the top. And I put a piece of foil on it to stop it from doing any more damage. But then the rest of them baked just fine. So, I mean, it's kind of hit and miss. I don't have an answer for why it does it sometimes, why it doesn't. So you want to keep an eye on it. Make sure you're where you need to be. All right, well, I'm going to let this bake for 55 to 60 minutes. And when I come back, we'll talk about what to do next. All right, see you here shortly. All right, guys, so we ended up, got the pie baked. Didn't have to cover it. I'll bring it over to you because it's still blazing hot. I literally just pulled it out of the oven. Didn't even shut the oven off yet. And it is dripping everywhere. But here is our pie right there. So all we got to do now is let that bad boy cool for a while. So I'm going to let it sit there and I'm going to let it cool until it gets down to room temperature. Or at least warm. Because you'd want to serve it. We could serve it warm. I'm going to let it go down to room temperature. Sit there long enough for me to make dinner, eat dinner, and then have it for dessert. So when I come back, we will cut us a piece and see if it turned out good. All right, I'll see you here in just one moment. So we let the pie cool for a considerable amount of time. Went and finished up some chores, did supper, and now we're getting ready to cut the pie. All right, so let me get you down here so we can see if we're a great success, failure. Is it sloppy? Is it firm? Is it, runny? Let's find out. I know it looks fantastic. I mean, you can't argue that, really. It looks good. It smelled great while it was baking. So I can't imagine that it's too horrible, but, I mean, you just never know. I've had pies come out that, look good, smell good, and were runny. I mean, it's, something didn't set. things like that. I mean, that's okay. That's how we learn. Now, at the same time, in this particular case, I actually sold a Dutch apple pie, and it's in the oven right now, and I used the exact same recipe. And of course, I based it on the fact that we were 2/3 of the way there with this one. So, I mean, I know things taste okay raw, only because I had it all over my fingers at one point or another. So, I mean, like I said, we'll see. You never know until you try, right? That's kind of the way it works. And I keep running into these like deep dish 9-inch pie pans. I'm not sure how that happens. Well, we are definitely firm. That's actually quite beautiful. Yeah, we got a little runny in there. Nothing to complain about, really. Yeah, I mean, I think we turned out okay. Yeah, I'm going to say go team on that one. Although, I did learn a lesson. So with this pie, I don't know why, but normally when you put it in the oven, you put, fruit pies on a pan. Well, the bottom of this thing has juice all over it from where it bubbled over, like it should, well, it got up underneath there. So with the one that's in the oven, I actually have the sheet on the rack below it, and the pie sitting on the rack it's supposed to be on. That way, no problems. All right. Well, I mean, let's take a look at her, because I think it looks fantastic. Other than that, I don't know why, but first piece, every time, I seem to lose the very tip of it. And it's still sitting in there. I see it. So, that part's a success. So now we know that we're not runny, that it smells good, and it looks good. So, we're down to the important part. Because if it can look all of that and then put it in your mouth, and it may taste just horrendous. I don't think it will, though, to be quite honest. Look at some of this crisp on there. Maybe, if I can get it on the fork. All right. It's still just a hair warm, too. That, my friends, that's a pie. Wow. There was one thing. Oh my goodness, that's good. There's one thing I didn't mention when baking. At least I don't think I mentioned it. If I did, it'd been like 3 minutes ago, or in my case, a few hours ago. To test this pie for doneness, not only are you looking for bubbling, which we had, but if you have a thermometer, you can temp it, and it has to be 175 degrees or higher. That way you know it's done. So, that being said, I need to have another bite of this real quick because, oh my gosh, this tastes good. I'll probably end up having a second piece. Wow. And I don't use that word lightly. That is good. So good. That crisp is just perfect. Try this. Try this recipe. Hands down. It's not hard. It's easy. It takes all of maybe 25 minutes to put together. It does take a little over an hour in the oven, at least in my oven. May only take an hour in yours. I'm saying 50 to 60 minutes, 55 to 60 minutes. And that's the hardest part. I mean, really, this is a great pie. Packed full of flavor. So, next week, I don't know what's going on yet for dinner. I'm not even sure what's going on yet for dessert. I just know that we're going to cook something, we're going to bake something, and I'm sure it'll be great. I do have a list of stuff that I want to try to get baked for us. I've probably got 3 months worth of baking ideas. And then I've all gotten from people, my friends on Facebook and my friends here locally that I see. And they're all great ideas now. I want to try every last one of them because they all sound amazing. It just, the last couple of weeks, with the raisin pie and then this Dutch apple, I wanted to make them once and try them before I made them for another person. So we got to do that together. That's kind of a new experience. Not only did I get to make pies I've never made before, but I get to make pies that in some cases I've never even heard of or tried, which was that raisin pie. And so far, knock on wood, we've been successful. But we'll figure it out. I guess Wednesday will be a surprise dinner, although I'm sure it'll be something good. I hope you guys do try that taco spaghetti from yesterday, because that was amazing. And next week's dessert, barring somebody doesn't come at me with a pie or a cake I've never done before, we'll try something off the hit list off of Facebook. All right? I love you. I love you very much. Tell somebody else you love them and you love them very much. Make us pie and give your neighbor a slice. You'll have a conversation for at least an hour, and they'll probably want to be your friend. I guarantee it. So, till next week, I love you. I'll talk to you later. Bye.